So in today's video, I'm going to go through the proper technique of a stiff-legged deadlift, and then also finish with a common problem that I see people making in this movement. So to start off, when we're doing this, in terms of body position relative to the bar and also feet, generally about shoulder width we want to be. So your feet is going to be similar to that of a stiff-legged deadlift. Generally what I do, the knot of my shoelace is going to be in the middle of the smooth part of the bar. Likewise, I don't want to be close to the bar so it's touching my shins. I want to have the shoelace about maybe a little bit, so if I'm looking down, it's not at the knot of my shoelace, it's maybe about halfway up my foot. Okay, so when I'm at this position, I want it to have a little bit of a distance from me. I don't want to be close here. What I generally find is that if the bar is close here, as people lift, they tend to scoop their hips because the bar is probably moving in the position that it wanted it to be in, which is around the midfoot and then also around the inline with your shoulder blade. Okay, so here the bar is behind your midfoot. It is behind your shoulder blade. So then, as I said, when people come up, I generally see a scooping action done and the pelvis kind of rounds and it just doesn't look like a very good stiff-legged deadlift. So keep the bar a little bit away from you. Next, when you are in this position here, your grip can just be, you can either have it close to your body or you can do it where your index finger, where the knurling starts, is going to be fine. No, that's the easy bit. Now, when we are going to pick up this bar, it is a hinge at the hip, okay? We are not bending the knees. There should be no change in knee bends from the start of the movement to the top to the bottom. Or when you get to the top, the knees might straighten a little bit, but for the moving portion between the bottom here and the top, in that moving portion, the angle of the knee doesn't change a whole lot, okay? Whereas conventional deadlift, the knee bends. So we want to generally keep a slight unlocking of the knee, okay? Technically, you could probably do it with a straight knee if you really wanted to. However, it feels like my knee is going to hyperextend and bend the wrong way, and I don't want that to happen. So, we're going to put a slight knee bend in the knee, and then all of the movement is coming from a hinge at the hip, okay? So, if I'm in this position here, I've got my feet where I said, I'm going to hinge over, slight unlocking of the knee, not fully straight, just a slight unlocking, okay? And this is going to be my start position. The other thing that I'm going to do before I start, my back, I want to arch. So I want to get my pelvis in an anterior pelvic tilt. This is going to put a greater stretch on your hamstrings, which I'll go for more at the end of this video. It's going to put a greater stretch on your hamstrings. Therefore, you're probably going to get added benefits of this exercise with the hamstring being in its lengthened, in the most lengthened position it can be in this bottom position. So, and also I'll probably take a little bit of stress off your lower back too. So I'm going to be here. So before I come up, I'm going to arch my back, okay? Which is basically, I'm doing this, all right? Tilt of the pelvis. Tilt. The last thing, there's slack in the bar. Pull on the bar, take the slack out the bar whilst you are arching your back. We don't want it to be jerky, okay? If I'm here and if I just lift, it can look quite jerky, okay? If you pull on the bar, you'll probably find, and with the tilted pelvis and your knees in the right position, as you pull on the bar, you're probably going to find that you'll get a really nice stretch on the back of your hamstring and they're going to feel very tense. You want to have that feeling before you lift the barbell off the floor. So, Put it all together. Feet position, hinging over, slight unlocking of the knee. Okay, now, arch, pull the slack so you hear the click. Alright, then I'm going to wait for a second. Hold that position, and then stand up without flexing my knees. Okay? Again, my knee angle should not change a whole lot. Arch, pull, breath. Arch, pull, breath. Now, the problem that I see that people make, which I touched on before, is during the movement. So this is both in an RDL and a stiff legged deadlift. The technique points are pretty much the same. But as people are hinging over, okay, they tend to bend their knee. You don't want to have a change in knee bends because you are taking tension off the back of the hamstring, which I can cover at the end of this video. So, just to be clear, with this stiff-legged deadlift, how I label it is a stiff-legged deadlift is off the floor from here, up, and then you're back on the floor, where at RDL, you're starting from the top, hinging over, and then you're just doing this kind of top portion of the movement and the bar doesn't touch the floor. So, with the knees, when you're here, common problem in a stiff-legged deadlift is people will start like this, and then as they're going to lift the bar off the floor, they bend their knees, okay? And then it kind of turns into this hybrid deadlift type movement. Deadlift, stiff legged deadlift type movement. Likewise, if people are going to do an RDL, they'll be up here, and rather than just hinging and keeping that knees in that same position, as they're hinging like this, they'll bend their knees. Okay? And then it kind of looks like a floating deadlift. Don't do a floating deadlift. Alright? Slight knee bend. Keep that knee position the entire time. And you're going to get more benefit from the exercise. So be mindful of what your knees are doing. Sometimes you'll be doing the exercise and you might not even actually notice that your knee is bending slightly. What I suggest doing is film yourself from the side, take a look at your knees, and just see if you're bending your knees or not. So, as I said, do not bend your knees in the deadlift, keep them in that locked position the entire time. And to be clear on why you don't want to bend the knees and why that's a problem, the long head of your hamstring is going to connect to the bottom of your pelvis, okay, it goes down, and it's going to connect to the bottom of your lower leg bone. So we want to have our hamstring in the most lengthened position because this is going to be the best to optimize or trigger muscle hypertrophy. So if you can imagine that this is my hamstring, alright, it's in the back of my pelvis here and it's connected to the bottom of my leg. As I lift my leg, okay, you can imagine that this is going to stretch my hamstring, and then if you were to extend your leg, well, that's going to put the hamstring in the most lengthened position, all right? If I was to bend my knee, okay, the length of the hamstring, there's going to be some slack in that hamstring muscle, so we don't want to have slack in the hamstring muscle, okay? So, again, when you're doing a stiff-legged deadlift, well, from a muscle hypertrophy perspective, you're trying to stimulate the muscle so it can grow. You want it to be in its most lengthened position when you're doing this exercise. So if you are bending your knee to you're sacrificing your knee bend just so you can lift more load, you're getting less out of the exercise. It looks cool that you can lift a lot of weight on your stiff-legged deadlift, but you're taking away the purpose of the movement of one, to stimulate hamstring growth, and two, to do a hip extension type movement for, I don't know, it might carry over to your deadlift or for whatever reason that you're doing this exercise. So if you're Bending your knees, either in an RDL or a stiff legged deadlift, well now you're just kind of turning it into a deadlift and you're taking it away from what the purpose of the exercise is. So again, do not bend your knee when you do this movement. You're going to take tension off the hamstring, therefore you are not getting the full benefits of the movement.